Hi guys, and welcome back to a new video. In today's video, I want to talk about the cross-realm trading that will be implemented in patch 10.1.5. For those of you who haven't seen my previous video or haven't been able to check this article on Wowhead, basically, players will be able in patch 10.1.5 to trade items and gold directly to characters on other realms in their region. So it means that now you will really be able to actually trade and sell things everywhere, and there is no more restrictions. So what I want to do in today's video is first explain what you need to do right now in order to best prepare for patch 10.1.5 and to be ready to enjoy this new system. Then I will explain what are some current opportunities that you should look into in order to make some gold later on in patch 10.1.5. And finally, I will also explain what you should do in order to avoid losing some gold because of this new system, because a lot of things are either going to become irrelevant or not as profitable as before. Just before I start diving into the topic, I think it's important to insist on the fact that right now, these are only very early news. We probably don't have all the information around these changes. So keep in mind that the only thing we are sure about is the fact that you will be able to open a trading window and then exchange gold and items with other players from any other realms in your region. There are a few things where, unfortunately, we're not really certain, a couple of gray areas. These include, for instance, the crafting orders. We're not sure if the crafting orders will become available for anyone, even from other realms. Same with the mailbox. It's not sure whether you will actually be able to send mails to other players from other realms. And finally, it's also uncertain whether at some point Blizzard is planning to introduce into the game the region-wide auction house for all the different categories of items. And it will a little bit make sense seeing the direction they're trying to take right now. So keep in mind that all my different recommendations and everything I'm going to share in today's video is based on the knowledge that we have so far, which is that it's probably going to be only restricted to opening a trade window and to exchange directly gold and items with other players. So if you won't be able to mail directly different items and everything to some of your characters on your same account, or to enjoy the region-wide auction house and everything, what you will need to do is to have a second account, because like that you will actually be able to exchange items from one realm to another using your two accounts. One thing that really you need to understand is that this system is going to change a lot how gold farming and gold making is currently working. And if you want to survive in this new system, probably you will have to at some point try and sell items on different realms in order to make sure to have your best chances at making as much profit as possible. So again, try to make sure to have two accounts that are prepared for patch 10.1.5, and like that you will be able very easily to exchange gold and items from one realm to another using your two accounts. Again, all you want to do is invite your other character that is on one realm where you actually want to have these items on, and then you simply want to open the trade window and trade all these different items and maybe some gold, and like that you will then be able to start selling all these different items on this other realm. One other thing that I would recommend you to do, especially if you're planning to craft and sell a lot of these new transmog and cosmetic items from patch 10.1.5, is of course to start creating a lot of characters on every realm in your region, because like that, as soon as the patch will launch and as soon as you will be able to start crafting all these different items, you will then be able to directly exchange all these different things on these different realms, and you will then be able to start selling all these items on every realm in your region. Of course, it doesn't have to be on every realm, but maybe try to focus on the ones where you know there's going to have a big market and where you really want to be involved in. So for instance, the high pop realms, maybe even medium pop realms are going to be really, really good for that. Now, let's talk about opportunities. I think it's important to insist on the fact that now that people will be able to actually exchange and sell items on every realm without having again to buy some of these character transfers and everything, it means that basically the value that is really specific to your realm is not really going to matter a lot anymore, at least for a big part of the different items that you're able to sell on the auction house. So with that, as you can imagine, there's a lot of things you can do in order to right now make sure to invest in some items that you will then be able to sell somewhere else when patch 10.1.5 will launch. One thing I want to insist on is the fact that, in my opinion, there are three main categories of items. First, you will have the ones that, in my opinion, are going to remain almost unchanged, even with this new system. Then in the middle, you have the ones that will be slightly changed, but still will remain pretty similar to what they are right now. And finally, you have the last category of items where these are probably going to change a lot and not for the best. Probably they're going to have a huge devalue and they're not going to be as profitable as they were right now. So of course, what you want to do is try to find some of the items that are part of this category of unchanged, or also some very cheap ones from the second category, and invest in these different items. Of course, you should not invest in the last category because this one is definitely not going to be interesting enough. When it comes to the different items that I would put under each category, for instance, in terms of unchanged items, I would include all the different unobtainable items or anything that has been removed from the game and that is really difficult to get. So for instance, you have all these different dinner suits and all these different things. These are cosmetic items that I talked a lot before, and these are not really going to change that much because, again, you cannot farm more of them. So these items are definitely things that you can invest in if you find some that are cheap. Then next to that, you of course have some really, really rare items that you can try to get. For instance, I'm thinking of all the different super rare items from Uldaman. These items are not going to become cheap simply because it's so difficult to actually get your hands on them. And so if you find some of them that are really cheap on your realm, for instance, just know that you will probably be able to then sell it back for a way higher price on another hyper realm later on in patch 10.1.5. Next to that, we also have, of course, most of the different materials. As we're going to see after, some of them will actually probably change a little bit, but a lot of them are not going to vary a lot because these materials are already region-wide. So the value you see here is already the value that anyone see on any other realms in your region. So these are probably not going to change a lot. Then, of course, you also have the very limited and restricted items. For instance, here I'm talking about items that you know you won't be able to farm again and again, even with bots or even with multi-boxing. For instance, the formal dengue. This is something that is from a vendor and you can only buy it once at a time for the entire realm. So it means that even if you try to get your hands on dozens of them, it won't work. You can only buy a certain capacity of these items. And so this is why the value is probably going to remain the same. And I don't think you're going to have big losses in investing in some of these items when they're very cheap again. Then, of course, you also have the very, very limited items, such as, for instance, some of the TCG mounts and things like that. These items are not going to change as well because even though some people might have a few in their banks and everything, these are probably going to remain very similar. So keep in mind all these TCG items and everything that you can find here are not going to change that much as well. And then after that, I would say also that some of the recipes and plants and patterns that are very rare and difficult to get, again, are not going to change a lot. So for instance, I'm thinking about the Elemental Laria. The Elemental Laria is really difficult to get. There's not that many available, for instance, in the European region right now. And so these are going to remain very expensive even with this cross-realm trading. Now, let's talk about the middle category. The middle category is going to include all the different items that are easy to farm, but really, really rare. So, for instance, here I'm thinking of the Varut's Guillotine. This is a weapon that is not that difficult to farm, but it's very, very low in terms of drop chance. And so again, even if people try to farm it again and again, sometimes it can take hours before you find even one of them. So these are the type of items that I think are going to have a little decrease in many realms in terms of the value, but it's never going to reach maybe 10,000 gold or something like that. It's always going to be interesting. So again, if you find one for 100,000 gold, definitely I think you can invest in it and you will definitely be able to sell it for a profit later on. Same with mounts or transmogs or any type of items that are, again, limited because of the way you have to farm these items. So for instance, here I'm thinking of the Death Charger, the Crimson Death Charger. This is a mount that you only get when you complete the legendary quest for Shadowmourne. This quest takes at least a month and a half to complete, and this is again not something that you can do all the time. So even if someone with multi-boxing is doing it on 10 characters at a time, it's not something that you will be able to do again and again and again. So right now, for instance, on some realms, you can find it for less than 140, 150,000 gold. And trust me, you will most likely be able to sell it for a big profit later on, whether it's on your realm or again on another realm where you can exchange this item on. After that, we're also going to have all the different items that are very difficult to craft. And by that, I mean, for instance, items that are locked behind a cooldown. So here, for instance, you have the different reborn weapons. These weapons will require you at least, I believe, like a month before being able to craft one of them with each of your characters. Because again, you will need to craft these daily materials that you cannot find on the auction house. And so you will have to accept the fate of this cooldown. So these weapons, for instance, right now on some realms, you can find them for a very cheap price. And again, later on, you can easily buy them and then sell them for a higher price on another realm. And again, keep in mind, even if someone is trying to use bots or multi-boxing, they won't be able super fast to like refurnish all the different auction houses everywhere in the region. So this is why this type of crafts are really good. So I think this category is really interesting. For instance, let's take one example, and this is the Tibu Scorching Straight Sword. As you can see, this one sells on average for 125 to 355,000 gold on European realms, and as you can see, I just bought tons of them for 37,000 gold. The reason why I did that is because I know that even if the people were botting, because clearly this is something that is directly from people botting, even if they're still farming these items and everything and trying to add even more in the auction house, what will happen is that people will simply buy them again and again and then exchange them on other realms in order to sell them. One thing that will probably happen is that, as you can see, now that I have all of them, I'm probably going to try to trade them with characters on many other realms and sell them all these different realms. So there's going to have more competition and probably the value is going to drop a little bit. But again, it's never going to drop to like 37,000 gold or something like that, because again, the bots, even if they're like trying their best, they won't be able to provide enough to continue selling them at this price when people are simply able to buy them and then exchange them on other realms. And this is the same, for instance, with all the different BFA mounts and all these different things, because even though on some realms you can definitely find them for a cheap price, and the reason is because, again, people are using bots and people are using multi-boxing in order to farm them really, really easily. I don't think, for instance, the Goldmaking Opportunities or any of these mounts from BFA are going to drop below like 50,000 gold or like 100,000 gold, simply because, again, people will like try to buy them as soon as they become cheap and sell them on another realm where there is a little bit less competition at that moment and where the value is a little bit better. Finally, in the last category, we're going to have all the different items that are easy to craft. So again, the items that do not require difficult materials to get or that are very cheap to craft. So for instance, here it's going to include transmog items such as the High Society Top Hat. These type of things right now in many realms are already selling for only 400 gold. The reason is because if you are clever enough, you can definitely craft them for a very, very cheap price. What will happen is most likely people are going to craft thousands of them and share them on every realm, and the value is going to crash on most realms. So this type of very easy items to craft are not a good investment opportunity, in my opinion, at all. For instance, even in terms of mounts, I would not recommend you to invest in any mounts that you can actually craft, because keep in mind, people will simply be able to buy so many new materials and resell for this very low value even after the release of patch 10.1.5. So for instance, you have the Mechanohog, all the different Panthers, all these different engineering items and everything. All of them are still going to be really cheap even after patch 10.1.5. So these are not items you should invest in at all, in my opinion. Then, of course, we have all the different common items that you can farm pretty easily. So here it includes, for instance, some of the different transmog items. Some of them will still be a little bit interesting, and I think they might get a little bit boost in price. For instance, the Glorious Leg Plates, one of the most famous one, is selling currently on some realms for like 2,000 gold, 3,000 gold. What will happen is most likely people are going to start buying all these items, and as soon as patch 10.1.5 is launched, they will send one of each on every realm, and like that they will be able sometimes to sell it for 100, 200,000 gold. But the thing is, keep in mind, these items are not so difficult to farm, and so probably there's going to have a lot of people doing that as well. And so I think the value is not really going to drop considerably, but also not really getting any increase, at least on most realms. So this is why this type of items, again, I would not recommend you to really invest in a lot in. If you find them at a ridiculous price, again, less than 2,000 gold or something like that, sure, why not? But keep in mind, there's going to have a lot of people farming them. And so probably there's going to have a lot of new items that are going to enter the market very soon after patch 10.1.5 will be released. Same with also some of the really easy to get plants and recipes. So here I'm thinking about all the different ones from the new raid. Unfortunately, these are very easy to get, and on many realms you can only buy them for less than 5,000 gold. These are, for instance, things that are not going to be really interesting because unfortunately there are so many available and it's so easy to get that people will simply buy a lot and spread them all around the different European realms or North American realms. And so I don't think these are going to get a big increase in value. Again, next to that, you have a lot that are way more interesting and that I didn't really mention before. For instance, the ring-bound hourglass or this type of things that are a little bit more difficult to get, not as much as the elemental area, but still, these are going to be really valuable, and these are more in the second category. But anything that is easy to get, I would say, is not a good investment. For instance, all the PvP ones, the obsidian and inferius, patterns and plants, this is not a good investment anymore, at least right now, because probably these markets are going to be completely soaked with all the people selling them. So this is really my main opinion on this new system and on the type of items you should invest in. Again, be very careful because it's very difficult to know, for instance, what people have in their banks, and also to know like the length of, for instance, botting and everything, and till what extent people will be able to actually farm all these different items in patch 10.1.5. So right now, as you can see, for instance, on this realm, I took a risk. I bought a lot of these different swords. Same, I bought one of the reins of the Crimson of Death Charger and then some of the shoot on reins of the Terrified Pack Mule from BFA. Maybe I won't be able to make a big profit. I think anyway, it's safe to say I'm not going to lose any gold. But again, it's always a risk to take. I do think right now there is a big possibility for a lot of you to make a lot of gold by investing in some of these items. But as always, it's flipping. Flipping is risky, and you will always take the risk of actually losing gold in the process. So just something that you really need to keep in mind if you are considering doing that before patch 10.1.5. Now, let's talk about what you should not do before patch 10.1.5. The first thing is something I was about to do actually today, and it's simply buying some of these character transfers. If you're someone who enjoys already selling items across different realms and everything, you know that most of the time you will have to use some of these character transfers. So again, these are going to become completely irrelevant for the purpose of gold making, and so you should not invest in these type of services. Same with gold swapping and all these other services that require a fee. If, for instance, right now you were planning to do it and it can wait until patch 10.1.5, then just wait, because like that you will be able to do it for free instead of paying sometimes up to 15% of the total amount of gold you want to exchange from one realm to another. Also, avoid investing in some of the items from the first category and also some of the items from the second category if they're not extremely cheap. So, for instance, right now, if you're on a realm where you see an item that is a little bit lower than the regional value, but not crazy lower, but you know you will probably be able on your realm to sell it for a profit, keep in mind that if you cannot sell it before the release of patch 10.1.5, probably in a few days, you will have a few people who will come with their own items and the value is going to drop again. So if you are planning on investing on some of them, do not do it. The ones that, in my opinion, are again going to be fully okay are the ones from the Unchanged category, the unobtainables and very, very difficult to get items. But over than that, be very careful in the next 3 weeks with your investments. Finally, avoid crafting, for instance, thousands of items that are easy to craft and then waiting for them to like sell for a really high price, because unfortunately that might not happen in patch 10.1.5. So for instance, if right now you are planning on crafting dozens of these High Society top hats, just be mindful that probably as soon as this patch will be launched, the value is going to drop considerably even on your realm. And also, of course, what you should do is if you have some items that are actually things that will probably be devalued in patch 10.1.5, try to sell them right now. So that's pretty much it for today's video. Again, keep in mind, we need to wait a little bit longer to get more information from Blizzard, but there are a couple of things that you can already do now that I think are safe to say will be good investments or good things to do in advance ahead of patch 10.1.5. I will be back very soon with more guides and more videos, especially I'm hoping to do more videos on this new system and to explain how you can benefit from it as much as possible. In the meantime, I wish you all a great start of the weekend and I will see you all very soon. Bye!